You idiot, Marjorie hissed, forgetting her facade of the doting mother. I told you to check the title before we started the guardianship. I told you to make sure your name was on the brick and mortar. You said the marriage license was enough, Grant screamed back. Excuse me, Tessa's voice broke through their bickering, shrill and panicked. Grant, where are we supposed to live? I gave up my apartment. I moved everything I have in these suitcases. You said we were moving into the master suite today. Shut up, Tessa, Grant snapped. The ugliness of it was breathtaking. Without the veneer of my money to smooth over the cracks, they turned on each other instantly. They were not a family. They were a pack of hyenas fighting over a carcass that had suddenly stood up and walked away. You need to remove your vehicles from the entrance, Patterson said, stepping back into his booth. I am calling the police to report a disturbance. You cannot do this to me. Grant threw his body against the iron gate, rattling it uselessly. My stuff is in there. My golf clubs, my collection. The house was sold as is. Patterson's voice came over the intercom now, distorted, but loud. Contents included. If you have a dispute, take it up with the new owner's legal counsel. Grant stood there, gripping the bars of the gate like a prisoner. He looked small. The $15 million backdrop that he used to define his personality was locked behind steel bars. His mother was looking at him with pure disgust. His pregnant mistress was sobbing on top of a Louis Vuitton trunk on the side of the road. I watched for another minute, etching the image into my mind. This was better than a scream. This was better than a slap. I had turned off the gravity in their world, and now I was watching them float away into the void. I put the rental car in gear. I checked my mirror to make sure the road was clear. Then I pulled out of the lot. I drove right past them. For a split second as I cruised by the entrance, Grant turned his head. He saw me. Our eyes locked through the tinted glass. I saw his jaw drop. I saw him take a step toward the road, raising his hand as if to stop me. I did not speed up. I did not slow down. I drove past him with the steady, indifferent pace of a stranger. I saw him in my rearview mirror, shrinking smaller and smaller, a man standing on a curb with his luggage. Realizing that he had never really been home, he had just been a guest who overstayed his welcome, I pulled my car onto the shoulder of the road, hidden by a thick row of privacy hedges about 200 yards down from the main entrance of Westbriar Hills. I picked up my phone and opened the security app. The new owner's team had been fast, but they had not yet scrubbed the remote access credentials for the exterior perimeter cameras. I had a front row seat to the aftermath of my own demolition derby. On the small screen, the scene looked like a tableau of modern tragedy. Grant was pacing in tight, angry circles, his phone pressed to his ear, likely leaving a voicemail I would never listen to. Tessa was sitting on her suitcase, her face buried in her hands. Marjorie was berating the security guard, Patterson pointing a manicured finger at his face, as if her indignation could override the electronic locks. Then the delivery truck arrived. It was not a standard mail truck. It was a private courier service, the kind used for high-value legal documents and urgent corporate transfers. The van was pristine white, unmarked except for a small serial number. I had scheduled this delivery with the same precision I applied to a quarterly earnings call. It was time to arrive exactly 15 minutes after the lockout. I watched as the courier, a uniformed man with a clipboard, stepped out of the van. He walked past the closed gate, ignoring Marjorie's shouting, and approached Grant. "Mr. Grant Holloway?" the courier asked. The microphone on the security camera picked up the audio clearly, cutting through the ambient noise of the wind and the trees. Grant lowered his phone, looking confused. "Yes. What now?" "Are you serving me papers?" "Delivery, sir," the courier said. He reached into the back of the van and pulled out a box. It was not a manila envelope. It was a gift box. It was wrapped in shimmering silver paper tied with a massive, heavy silk bow in deep navy blue, the corporate colors of Redwood Marlowe. It looked for all the world like an extravagant wedding present. Marjorie stopped yelling at the guard. Her eyes lit up with a desperate, hungry hope. She grabbed Grant's arm. "See?" she hissed loud enough for the mic to catch. "I told you it is a peace offering. She is sending a gift. She is realizing she went too far. Open it, Grant. It is probably the keys. Grant looked at the box, then at the gate. The panic in his eyes receded, replaced by that familiar, smug confidence. He straightened his spine. He believed her. He actually believed that after I had sold the house and emptied the accounts, I would send him a wrapped present to apologize. His narcissism was truly a fortress that no logic could breach. "Thank you," Grant said to the courier, signing the digital pad with a flourish. The courier nodded, hopped back into his van, and drove away. Grant stood there on the curb, the silver box heavy in his hands. Tessa stood up, wiping her eyes. Is it from her?" "Of course it is," Marjorie said, smoothing her dress. "She is playing hard to get, but she knows she cannot function without him." "Open it, Grant. Let's get inside out of this heat." Grant pulled the ribbon. It unspooled with a luxurious whisper. He tore the paper. Underneath was a rigid black box with the company logo embossed in gold foil. He lifted the lid. There were no keys inside. There was no apology note. Inside lay 2 thick, sealed envelopes and a single heavy cardstock note resting on top. Grant picked up the card first. He read it aloud, his voice gaining strength. "To the happy couple, may you find your new beginning as enlightening as I found my audit." He frowned. "Audit?" He handed the second envelope to Tessa. "This one has your name on it." Tessa took it, her hands shaking. Grant ripped open his own envelope. He pulled out a stack of documents stapled together with a blue legal backing. I zoomed in on the video feed. I knew exactly what those pages said. I had drafted them with the head of human resources and the chief legal officer 3 hours ago. "Notice of termination for cause," Grant read. His voice wavered. "What? What is this?" "Read the rest," I whispered to the empty car. Grant's eyes scanned the page, darting back and forth as the reality hit him like a physical blow. Violation of corporate ethics policy, embezzlement of company funds, falsification of expense reports. He looked up, his face pale. "She fired me." "She cannot fire me, Grant." Tessa's voice was a high, thin wail. She was holding her own letter. "Grant, I have been blacklisted." "What?" Grant snapped, distracted by his own disaster. "It says, my vendor contract is terminated effective immediately due to collusion and fraud." Tessa read, tears spilling over again. "It says I knowingly approved false invoices for marketing events that were actually personal wedding expenses. Grant, they are threatening to sue me for restitution. They want the money back, the catering, the flowers. They know everything." "Shut up, Tessa!" Grant yelled, flipping to the next page of his document. "This is insane. Misuse of corporate credit lines, unauthorized travel expenses. This is my company. I built this." Marjorie snatched the papers from his hand. "Let me see that. This is just a scare tactic. She is trying to intimidate you." But as Marjorie read, her confidence evaporated. These were not angry letters from a jealous wife. These were forensic autopsies of their greed. Every dinner, every flight, every client meeting that was actually a date, it was all listed, itemized, and categorized as theft. "She is not just firing you," Marjorie whispered, her voice trembling with genuine fear. "Grant, she is stripping you of your severance. She is canceling your stock options. She is citing the morality clause in your employment contract." "Employment contract?" Grant laughed. A manic, hysterical sound. "I do not have an employment contract. I am a partner. I am an owner. Zara and I ran this together." He reached into the box and pulled out the final document, a single sheet of heavy cream paper with a gold seal at the bottom. "Redwood Marlowe Consulting." He read, "Shareholder Structure Declaration." He froze. "What does it say?" Marjorie demanded. "It says," Grant choked on the words. "It says Zara Ortiz holds 98% of the voting shares. It says I hold 0. "That is impossible." Grant screamed. He threw the paper on the ground. "That is a lie. I signed the incorporation papers." I was there on day one. You were there, I said softly to the screen, answering him across the distance. But you were too busy picking out the office furniture to read the bylaws. Grant had always assumed that being my husband made him my equal in business. He assumed that because I let him carry the title of Director of Strategy, he actually had strategic power. He never understood that in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of the board, he was an at-will employee I had graciously allowed to play dress-up. Locked him out. The realization finally locked him out. The realization finally broke through his delusion. He was not a king who had been temporarily inconvenienced. He was a pauper who had been living on charity he was too arrogant to recognize. She played me, he whispered. The whole time she knew. Tessa dropped her letter and grabbed his lapels. Grant, what do we do? They are going to prosecute. If we don't pay back the wedding money, they said they are calling the district attorney. I cannot go to jail. Grant, I am pregnant. I don't have the money. Grant roared at her, shoving her hands away. Don't you get it? I don't have anything. The cards are frozen. The job is gone. The house is sold. You said you were rich. Tessa screamed back, her face twisting into ugliness. You said she was just the workhorse. You said you were the brains. I am the brains, Grant insisted, but his voice cracked. He looked at Marjorie for support, but his mother was busy backing away, distancing herself from the wreckage. I told you to be careful, Marjorie muttered, clutching her purse. I told you not to underestimate her on the financials. You told me to take the house. Grant yelled at his mother. You told me she was weak. I watched them turn on each other, a circular firing squad of blame and panic. The wedding gift box sat on the curb, shining in the sun. A beautiful container for their absolute ruin. I closed the app on my phone. I did not need to see any more. The image of Grant on his knees holding a termination letter while his mistress screamed about jail time was enough to sustain me for a lifetime. I put the car in drive and pulled back onto the road. My phone buzzed with a notification from Miles. Subject Phase 2 complete message. The audit team is ready for the compliance meeting tomorrow. Do you want to be there? I smiled. Reply. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Grant thought the firing was the end. He was wrong. The firing was just the opening statement. The trial was about to begin. The conference room at the downtown offices of Miles Kadar was a fortress of silence, insulated from the chaotic noise of the city below. The only sound was the rhythmic tapping of a forensic accountant's keyboard. I sat at the head of the table, not as a scorned wife, but as the majority shareholder of a company under siege. We are not here to exact revenge, I told the team assembled before me. Miles sat to my right, and two senior auditors from an external firm sat opposite. We are here to protect the assets of Redwood and Marlowe and to preserve the integrity of the firm. If Grant Holloway is destroyed in the process, that is a byproduct of his own actions, not my objective. Miles nodded, sliding a thick binder across the polished wood table. We have finished the preliminary forensic sweep. It is worse than we thought, Zara. It was not just the wedding. I opened the binder. The pages were covered in highlighted rows of transaction data. Look at page 4, the lead auditor said, adjusting his glasses. We found a recurring monthly payment of $12,000 to a vendor listed as Summit Strategic Solutions. On paper, they provide consulting support for remote logistics. But when we ran a background check on the tax identification number, we found a match. I looked at the name registered to the number, Kevin Lane. Tessa's brother, I asked, my voice flat. Her cousin, the auditor corrected. He is a 22-year-old surfing instructor in San Diego. He has no consulting license, no business address, and certainly no logistics experience. The invoices were generated from a template available on a free website. Grant has been funneling company money into the Lane family pockets for 8 months. It gets darker, Miles interjected. He tapped a section marked Credit Inquiries. Grant applied for 3 separate lines of business credit last week, Miles explained. He used the company's financials, but he listed himself as the sole guarantor. He was trying to leverage the company's AA credit rating to secure personal cash loans totaling $4 million. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. He needed the guardianship, I realized aloud. The banks probably flagged the application because my name is on the incorporation papers. If he had that emergency guardianship order declaring me incompetent, he could have signed for those loans as my conservator. Exactly, Miles said grimly. He was not just going to leave you, Zara. He was going to bury you in debt. He was building a golden parachute out of your credit score. I closed the binder. The anger I felt was no longer hot. It was absolute zero. I want everything documented. Every wire transfer, every fake invoice, every IP log showing who approved these payments. I do not want a narrative. I want a timeline that is legally bulletproof. We have it, the auditor assured me, but there is a weak link. Grant will claim he was duped. He will claim Tessa or her family set up the vendor and he just signed off on it without looking. He plays the negligent but innocent card very well. He won't be able to play that card this time. I said, set up a formal compliance meeting for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Invite the head of Human Resources, the General Counsel, and the fraud unit from the insurance provider. Tell Grant it is a mandatory post-audit review. Do not tell him I will be there. He might not come, Miles warned. He knows he is fired. He will come, I said with certainty, because Grant is arrogant. He thinks he can talk his way out of anything. He thinks if he can just get in the room with the suits, he can charm them into believing this is all a misunderstanding. He needs to believe he still has a chance to salvage his reputation. I left the office an hour later to clear my head before the final showdown. As I walked through the lobby, my phone buzzed. It was an internal number from Redwood and Marlowe. I answered. This is Zara. Ms. Ortiz. The voice was whispering, trembling with obvious fear. This is Elena from the marketing department. I knew Elena. She was a junior associate, bright but impressionable. She had been Tessa's closest friend in the office. They went to lunch together every day. If anyone was loyal to the new regime, it was her. What can I do for you, Elena? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. I need to see you, she stammered. Please, I heard about the firing. I heard about the audit. I cannot go to jail, Miss Ortiz. I just did what I was told. Meet me at the coffee shop on 3rd Avenue. I said, you have 10 minutes. When I arrived, Elena was already there, huddled in a corner booth, looking pale and terrified. She had a tablet clutching to her chest like a shield. When she saw me, she started to cry. I am sorry, she sobbed. I didn't want to help them. But Grant, Mr. Holloway, he said if I didn't push the invoices through, he would fire me. He said he was taking over the company and you were phasing out. Compose yourself, Elena, I said, sitting down opposite her. Tears do not qualify as evidence. Facts do. She sniffed and unlocked her tablet. She pushed it across the table to me. These are the emails, she whispered. Grant didn't use his corporate email. He used his personal Gmail to send me the instructions. He thought it wouldn't be tracked. I scrolled through the messages. They were explicit. Elena, push the summit invoice through today. Bypass the secondary approval. I will override it on the back end. Just get it done, or do not bother coming in on Monday. Elena, if anyone asks about the catering budget for the Denver event, you tell them it was a client acquisition dinner. Do not mention the wedding planner. He threatened you. I noted, reading a particularly aggressive email where Grant implied he would ruin her future career references if she hesitated. He made me sign the witness statement too, Elena confessed, her voice barely audible. The guardianship thing. He brought it to my desk and stood over me until I signed it. He said it was just a formality to help you get medical leave. I didn't know he was trying to take your rights away. This was the smoking gun. The auditors had the numbers. But Elena had the intent. She had the proof that Grant was not a passive victim of Tessa's scheming, but the active architect of the fraud. He had used his power to coerce a subordinate into facilitating his crimes. You are going to forward all of these to my attorney right now. I told her. Am I going to be fired? She asked, tears welling up again. I have a student loan. I can't lose this job. I looked at her. She was young, manipulated by a man she was trained to respect. She was not the villain. She was collateral damage. If you cooperate fully, I said, and if you testify to exactly what you just told me, You will keep your job. You will be placed on probation, and you will undergo retraining, but you will not be terminated, and you will definitely not go to jail. She slumped with relief. I will do anything. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. I stood up. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, you are going to walk into the main conference room. You are going to look Grant Holloway in the eye, and you are going to tell the room exactly how he forced you to help him steal from me. I can do that, she said, a newfound resolve hardening her features. She was angry now, realizing how much Grant had used her. Good, I said. Go home, Elena. Sleep well. I walked back out onto the street. The chessboard was set. I had the king in check from 3 different angles. The financial records blocked his movement to the right. The legal documents blocked his movement to the left. And now the witness testimony blocked his retreat. Grant thought he was coming to a meeting to negotiate a severance package. He had no idea he was walking into his own eulogy. I hailed a cab, feeling the weight of the day settle on my shoulders. But for the first time in a week, the weight felt light. It was the weight of a gavel, raised and ready to fall. The conference room doors opened at exactly 9 o'clock. Grant walked in, expecting a private mediation with his wife. He was wearing a fresh suit, likely purchased on a credit card that was about to be declined, and he wore an expression of practiced contrition. He had prepared a speech. I could see it in the way he adjusted his tie and smoothed his hair. He was ready to apologize just enough to get the credit lines reopened, but not enough to admit he was wrong. He stopped dead 3 steps into the room. I was not sitting alone. To my right was Miles Kedar. To my left was the lead forensic auditor from the external firm. Beside him sat the vice president of human resources, looking grim. And in the corner, silent and observant, sat 2 agents from the Economic Crimes Unit of the State Prosecutor's Office. "What is this?" Grant asked, his voice cracking. He looked at me, his eyes wide with betrayal. "Zara, I thought we were going to talk, just us." "Why are all these people here?" "We are talking, Grant," I said, my voice calm and steady. "This is what accountability looks like. You are blowing this out of proportion," Grant shouted, slamming his hand on the back of an empty chair. He tried to summon the dominance he used to display in our kitchen, the loud voice that used to make me retreat. "You are doing this because you are jealous. You are doing this because I found someone who actually makes me happy. This is a vindictive, hysterical reaction from a scorned woman." The room remained silent. No one flinched. The agents in the corner didn't even blink. "I am not doing this because I am jealous, Grant," I replied, folding my hands on the table. "I am not doing this because of Tessa or the baby or the wedding. I am doing this because of the paperwork." I nodded to Miles. Miles opened the dossier in front of him. He didn't speak with emotion. He spoke with the dry, crushing weight of facts. "Mr. Holloway," Miles began, "we have documented 112 instances of wire fraud over the last 18 months. We have traced unauthorized payments totaling $400,000 to a shell company listed as Summit Strategic Solutions." "That is a legitimate vendor," Grant lied, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "They handle logistics. I signed those contracts." "We know you signed them," the auditor interjected, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "And we know that the IP address used to generate the invoices matches the IP address of your personal laptop. We also know that the bank account receiving the funds is registered to a Kevin Lane, Tessa's cousin." Grant palled Tessa. "Tessa must have done that on my computer. She has my passwords. I didn't know. She tricked me." "We also have this," Miles continued, ignoring the outburst. He produced the affidavit from Elena, the marketing associate. "This is a sworn statement from your subordinate detailing how you threatened her employment if she did not process these fraudulent invoices. And here are the emails sent from your account, confirming those threats." "It is a misunderstanding," Grant was pleading now, his eyes darting to the police officers. "I can explain. I was under pressure. I was trying to grow the business by stealing from it. I built this company with you." He screamed at me. "I am a partner. I am entitled to those funds. You are an employee." The HR vice president said, speaking for the first time, and as of yesterday, you are a terminated employee. Your access to the building is revoked. Your severance is forfeited under the morality clause of your contract. And regarding your equity claim, she pushed the shareholder declaration toward him. He didn't look at it. He knew what it said. "This is entrapment," Grant hissed. "You set me up. You waited until I was vulnerable." "I waited until I was sure," I corrected him. Grant slumped into a chair, the fight draining out of him. "Fine, fine. You win. You took the house. You took the job. You took the money. Are you happy? Is this enough revenge for you? Can I go now? I have a pregnant fiancé waiting for me in a motel because you locked us out of our home." "Not just yet," I said. "There is one last loose end." I pulled the final document from my folder. It was the original copy of the emergency guardianship petition I had retrieved from the safe. "You tried to have me declared incompetent." I said, "You tried to use the legal system to strip me of my rights so you could seize control of my assets before I could divorce you." I was worried about your stress," Grant stammered. But it was a weak lie. "You were worried about my money," I said. "But you made a mistake, Grant. You involved your mother." I laid the document on the table, pointing to the witness signature. "Marjorie Holloway." We traced the notary stamp. Miles said Marjorie didn't just sign this as a witness. "She is listed as the co-licant on the bank loans you tried to open using Zara's identity. That makes her an accomplice to bank fraud and conspiracy to commit identity theft." Grant looked at me, and for the first time I saw genuine terror in his eyes. He didn't care about himself, but the realization that he had dragged his mother into a felony charge shattered him. "Leave her out of this," he whispered. "She just did what I told her. She didn't know. She knew enough to sign her name." I said, "The agents here are not just investigating you, Grant. They are issuing a subpoena for Marjorie this afternoon." Grant let out a sound that was not human. It was a guttural scream of pure frustration and loss. He stood up, knocking his chair over. "You cannot do this," he roared. "You cannot destroy my whole family just because I fell out of love with you." "I am not destroying your family," I said, standing up to meet his gaze. "You did that when you decided to treat me like an asset to be liquidated instead of a human being. You wanted a chess match. Grant, you just forgot to check if your opponent was the one who designed the board." The agent stood up and moved toward him. "Grant Holloway," one of them said, "we need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding the embezzlement of funds from Redwood and Marlowe Consulting." Grant looked at me one last time as they guided him toward the door. He looked stripped. The arrogance, the charm, the entitlement. It was all gone. All that was left was a man who had gambled everything on the assumption that I was weak and lost everything because I was patient. "Zara," he said, his voice breaking. "Please, goodbye, Grant," I said. The door closed behind them. The silence returned to the room. I sat back down. My hands were not shaking. My heart was not racing. I felt a profound sense of peace. I picked up the pen Miles had left for me. I pulled the divorce petition toward me, the simple, no-fault divorce I had instructed Miles to file only after the criminal charges were secure. I signed my name. It was over. There would be no drawn-out custody battle for the dog. There would be no fighting over the china. There would be no late-night text messages fighting for closure. The closure was in the evidence file. The closure was in the empty seat where my husband used to sit. I looked at Miles. "File it." "It is done," Miles said. "You are free." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city I had conquered. They all thought I was the victim. They thought I was the poor, work-obsessed wife who got blindsided. They were wrong about one thing. My silence in those first few days wasn't submission. It was me counting the evidence. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So, please leave a comment below, sharing your location and your thoughts on Zara's revenge. Don't forget to subscribe to the Olivia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people.